Welcome to Life in Full Expression with me, your host, Beth Wolfe. In this show, we will explore, elevate, expand, and learn how to live your best life. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to live your life in full expression or create an expansive vision for your future? Get ready to be energized to fully express yourself, discover your heart's clarity for dynamic direction in life decisions, and develop your unique capabilities so you are delivering your ever-increasing capacities into your world. Join me, Beth Wolfe, and unleash the limitless capabilities of your soul, experiencing amazement, collaboration, fun, and purpose. Life in Full Expression starts now. All right, super cool. Welcome, amazing souls, to Life in Full Expression. I'm your host, Beth Wolfe, and we got something special today, listeners. We've got the amazing Leah Thompson in the house. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Beth. That introduction, that was perfection. I just loved it.
Well, thanks to a lot of the people at Transformation Talk Radio, Dr. Pat and the producers, helping me put that all together. They are a phenomenal crew. Well, today, listeners, you amazing souls, Leah and I are going to be talking about creating a beloved community and commitment. We thought that this would be a really cool topic as things are coming into election season and things tend to heat up in our world and our country. And so we wanted to dive in and just give us a little bit of discovering and discussing what might it look like for each one of us to be part of a creative process where we could be in and participating in a beloved community and having commitment to that. So if you're not familiar with my show, it is Life in Full Expression in 7 dimensions. So today, Leah and I are going to dive into 2 particular dimensions, the social and the environmental. So let me give you a little brief summary of what is the social dimension so that we're all kind of on the same page. It really means the ability to interact effectively with other people and in social environments. It means that you have the ability to develop satisfying interpersonal relationships and fulfill social roles. It's also about participating in and contributing to our community, which is exactly what we're going to dive into today. And one of my favorite parts is living in harmony with fellow human beings and developing positive interdependent relationships. And this is super important because if we are exercising and implementing a personal health in ourselves, then that's exactly what we're going to bring to our community. And then the environmental dimension, a review of that, or if it's new to you, is really about the impact your world has on your well-being, as well as your own environment having an impact on the world as well. And it's really about our home, our social environment, working to preserve and enhance environment. So there's our information. But without further ado, let's find out who Leah is, this amazing soul that I have recently come to know, and I'm super excited she's in my life. But she has come from, a vast amount of experience for how little time you've been on this earth so far. I'm very impressed.
I'm a quick
She
learner.
has got her own amazing branding consulting business. She's a photographer that has got an extraordinary eye. And just to give you a little bit of an overview, she provides a business with quality imagery and invites their ideal customer to really connect with their brand by visualizing themselves. I love that as a coach, using their product or their service, and really loves to utilize it in an authentic way and use what is called effective marketing style with none other than the best storytelling ever. What I love about Leah is she's passionate about supporting local economies, communities, and a commitment to her having a vibrant lifestyle. And she definitely brings that energy wherever she is. She's an amazing wife and a mom of 2 super cool boys. So without further ado, Leah, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, Beth, you filled my cup. I feel like I'm blushing. That's odd. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm
You
so
are
glad to
so
be here.
welcome. Yeah. So I hear that you went to Denver over the weekend to celebrate
A
an amazing.
wedding. It
Yeah.
was wonderful. And I actually have never been to Colorado. I like drove through a corner of it to get to Texas one time from Utah to Texas, but it was beautiful. Denver's a beautiful city. We actually went out to Lyons, which was a little bit further out of Denver, but it was stunning, red rocks, and it was the venue was right on a river. I had wished I brought my camera, but I wasn't there to work. I was there to just be a guest, and it was wonderful.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm glad you and your family got to enjoy that.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into this.
Mhm.
First segment that we're going to really look at is community. And let's just kind of give some general definition to it. So not only you and I are on the same page, but our audience. And so I thought I'd just give us a little bit. If we define community, it's a group of people with a common characteristic or interest living together with within a larger society. Another way we could look at it is community is both a feeling and a set of relationships among people that
Mhm.
form and maintain communities to meet common needs. And I would put in there not only needs, but wants and desires and dreams. And members of the community have a sense of this is really important. They have a sense of trust, they have a sense of belonging, a sense of safety and caring for each other. And then finally, a great community is where people take pride and care in embracing a living environment, respecting and supporting one another, regardless of age, gender, race, creed. It's
Mhm.
just a really cool, great, cohesive community that they feel safe, confident, and then we can create prosperity and a happy place together. So,
Yeah, and I'd
yeah,
say that's the ideal there, that beloved community where it's entirely, some people might put it up there as some sort of utopia that's unreachable, but it actually is achievable. It just requires us all to have a common goal and have this commonality amongst each other, recognizing our humanness as a basis. I love that in your definitions of community, you touch on the needs and the wants because when you think community, for instance, for me, I live in Paulsbo, which is a city, and so you could say that's a community, and it is in a geographical sense. But within this community, we also have the LGBTQIA community, we have Black communities, we have Hispanic communities, we have religious communities, and there is within those communities, you have these subsects of feeling like you're one, like you're seen, your needs are met in ways that maybe others can't meet, and you feel safe. And I think that that's a beautiful thing about community is it can have this overarching umbrella, but then subsects underneath it.
yeah, beautiful. And I love just the visual that you gave with an overarching umbrella and their subsects. And I love some of the quotes that you and I have talked about before we came on the show. And I first learned about even the beloved community phrase that it came from Martin Luther King. I know Marianne Williamson has quoted, and that's one of her stances that she's putting on is running for president is that beloved community. And so what were some of the things that you found from other
Yeah.
people that
Yeah,
you looked at?
so I mean, when I think community, I'm a huge Mr. Rogers fan. I grew up obviously watching Mr. Rogers and then raising my own kids, I realized that was the kind of television I wanted my kids to be exposed to. Um, there's something so rich about the way that he brings in community and the way he expresses it in neighborly ways. So I have this quote. Do you want me to share the Fred Rogers quote now, or we can wait till later
Absolutely.
if we want to keep
Yeah.
moving on?
Well, I think we could bring in Mr. Rogers quotes all the time.
All
So,
day long. I have them
yeah.
all over my
Yeah.
house.
I don't think we're going to sing the song today though of
I do have a really sweet video of my youngest when he was 2.5 singing Mr. Rogers' song, and I'm like, it melts my heart because
okay, well maybe
it's
we'll
very
bring that
sweet.
on.
Someday. So one of my favorite quotes from him comes from one of the many books I have. This is The World According to Mr. Rogers. And this quote is, imagine what our real neighborhoods would be like if each of us offered, as a matter of course, just one kind word to another person. There have been so many stories about the lack of courtesy, the impatience of today's world, road rage, and even restaurant rage. Sometimes all it takes is one kind word to nourish another person. Think of the ripple effect that can be created when we nourish someone else. One kind, empathetic word has a wonderful way of turning into many. And
Mm,
I just love that he gave this effect of you say something kind to the person serving you coffee and it fills their cup. And then if another customer comes in and isn't quite so kind, it's okay. Like that carried them through that experience. Or how one negative interaction can become a ripple effect. It's the same with kindness. You can be kind, hold the door, say good morning, compliment someone's outfit, say it's good to see you, see someone for who they are, and they will want to go forward and do that to the next person they interact with.
it's beautiful. One key element of that quote that I think is absolutely beautiful is nourishment. That we know it's vital for us to nourish our bodies.
Mhm.
And we know that if we want something to grow really well, that nourishment is so important. And you having, two young boys, you nourish them in all different kinds of ways. And what if that could be a skill set that was really, you know, even putting it out there in the airwaves of the universe, that there would be a course on how to nourish not just our bodies,
Absolutely.
but nourish our communities, nourish our families, nourish our friendships.
Mhm.
And really ultimately, I, as a life coach and consultant, of self-nourishment first, because if we are not taking care of ourselves, first and foremost, and not in a selfish way, but really to share that nourishment in an empathetic way, so that if we do go to the store, which we will, and we run into someone that might be struggling in that area of not feeling uplifted and nourished, that we can then bathe them in the nourishment that we have brought up in our own lives.
Absolutely. It's being able to see someone maybe experiencing some of the things that Miss Rogers listed there of road rage and restaurant rage and just impatience in general, and reflect on them as they were once an innocent young child and they deserve and need patience, and they need that expressed to them sometimes to understand it. Not that you should ever take abuse, but it's
Right.
a perspective to take where it's, put kindness out there and remember that that comes from you. So be kind to yourself. Speak to yourself in the same kind way. Nourish your well-being.
I love it. I love it. You had some other quotes by John Lewis
Mhm.
that I absolutely love that you brought up as we were prepping
Yes.
for this.
Well, when you mentioned the beloved community, and I was like, man, that stirs something. And last year I had read Walking with the Wind, which is John Lewis's memoir. And in the first part of that book, he is sharing a story of when it would get so stormy and windy that he and his cousins would hold hands and they would all have to walk slowly across the house with the wind to keep it from lifting up off the ground. And that was where this walking with the wind, where it's like, oh, if we don't all work together holding hands and walking slowly across the house, our house could get torn up from the ground. And so this quote from his is, children holding hands walking with the wind. That is America to me, not just the movement for civil rights, but the endless struggle to respond with decency, dignity, and a sense of brotherhood to all the challenges that face us as a nation as a whole. And obviously, beloved community, it was coined by a philosopher like in the early 20th century, through a fellowship. I'm going to butcher the name of it, but it was a fellowship group that that Martin Luther King Jr. was a part of, and he
Mhm.
took this and made it part of his movement in the civil rights, and it became adopted through all of those who were involved in joining hands, finding brotherhood, sisterhood,
Mhm.
and being able to use that to move through.
I love that. I love that, walking through the wind. That setting intentions and goals are a little bit different in my experience. goals can, be kind of task orientated, but an intention to set for ourselves in the morning before we start our day or before we go to sleep, that what would be one way that, I could hold hands and walk in the wind today,
Mhm.
opens you up to a more empathetic and nourishing, just walking through the world of wherever you are, whether you are in Paulsbo, where Leah and I live, or wherever you are in the world, that is beautiful for us to set an intention. And that's really part of what Leah and I would also invite you to, as you are listening to this, that, calling yourself to an action, of what would it be like for you to up level your commitment to community and a beloved community, and first and foremost for you to be your own beloved community on the inside environment, and loving yourself first. So that's beautiful. You had another quote by Jim Henson,
Jim Henson. Yeah. I mean, if
the
we can do that really
amazing
quick, sure.
Muppets.
I
Yeah,
know. I'm such a child at heart. I find so much joy. It comes back to we're just so innocent and young. But
yeah.
his quote is, I know that it's easier to portray a world that's filled with cynicism and anger, where problems are solved with violence. What's a whole lot tougher is to offer alternatives, to present other ways conflict can be resolved. And to show that you can have a positive impact on the world. To do that, you have to put yourself out on a limb, take chances, and run the risk of being called a do-gooder. And I just thought it was funny that it's risky to be called a do-gooder, but I think I love that he was saying it takes bravery and to step out of that sort of the ease
Mhm.
of getting angry. And it might be exciting to see and lean into, you want to grab the popcorn and see what's happening, and you are maybe drawn to that, but it's hard.
Yeah, it's challenging. I love how you said, grab the popcorn and watch the drama.
Hmm. I
And
think we're conditioned at this point in our culture to sensationalize that, and to maybe,
mhm,
and evolutionarily, I could go on, but like evolutionarily, we prioritize things that are dangerous or scary, anger, because it is
mhm.
meant to protect us. But at this point now, it is we have to make the harder choice to be kind and to step outside of our comfort zone.
Absolutely. It does remind me of a previous podcast that I did about scarcity versus sufficiency.
Mm.
And there is a sufficiency. It's a state of mind. And as I've traveled around the world to, underdeveloped nations, I have seen people with very little to no materialism have an abundance of sufficiency. It had nothing to do with materialism. So,
Mhm.
on that note, Leah and I are going to take a short break. And as we take a short break, I just invite you guys, as you are listening to this, to just ponder, what's your beloved community like? How much more could you beloved yourself and love yourself and bring that greaterness outside of your day and setting that intention? So we're going to go to a short break. And when we come back, we're going to take on the second part of this, where we're really going to look at commitment, because you can say that you want beloved community, but what is it? It's going to take commitment. So we're going to talk about little different kinds of views of commitment. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Life in Full Expression. Your host, Beth Wolfe, and my guest, Leah Thompson, today. Welcome back, you guys, to Life in Full Expression. I'm your host, Beth Wolfe, and today I have an amazing guest with me, Leah Thompson. Thanks so
Hey
much for
there.
joining us. And this second segment that we are talking about how to create a beloved community and commitment. So this portion of it, we're going to talk a little bit about commitment. And I'm going to reference one of my favorite people, Lynn Twist, who wrote two amazing books, The Soul of Money, and this one, Living a Committed Life, which is really about finding freedom and fulfillment in a purpose larger than yourself. I actually used this book even in the college course I teach, which is personal wellness, of helping young people really understand kind of a different level of being social and their spirituality, that in essence it's really being part of something larger than yourself. Don't I love that definition? Don't
Yeah, I love that too.
spirituality.
That's a beautiful way to explain that. I love that so much.
Yeah, it's been transformational for young adults. Some of them are running start students, so they're in high
Mhm.
school, but in their early 20s. And if you're not plugged in and necessarily into an organized religion, I can see that this has been an incredible help to students. And the reason why I bring this up for us is I think it's really important to creating a beloved community is that we do have a sense of a larger purpose than our own individual life. It's
Absolutely, absolutely. Even as someone who was raised up in a organized religion and had that in high school and college, I would have loved something outside of that to grab onto and grab a hold of.
Yeah, same. I almost wish I would have coached myself in high school.
I
Like,
know. Go back
what?
in time, coach
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. Where was I? Well, and a little bit more about Lynn Twist. I'm going to read a little bit from chapter 4 in her latest book. But she is phenomenal. She started with the Hunger Project, which was really about eradicating world hunger. And they introduced that it was two sides of a coin, that there was actual physical hunger, but there was also emotional hunger too. So they didn't ignore that aspect as well. And so she was committed to that for years and then really got an amazing calling from the Amazon forest that really came in, you might call it a woo-woo way. I love woo-woo though.
Love the
That
woo-woo.
yeah, she was really and basically made the Pachamama Alliance and really the Amazon forest being well taken care of. But what I love about her is she's a global visionary. And so I want to read to you and our listeners a little bit about um, taking a stand.
Mhm,
And as I introduce this segment, we're going to lead into, and Leah and I are going to talk about the difference between taking a stand and taking a position.
mhm,
And both are good, yet we're going to explain to you a little bit more. So I want to start off with she gives a quote by Archimedes that says, "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I will move the earth." And so keep in mind of what lever you could place to stand that would increase a beloved community in and around yourself. So
mhm,
she writes that taking a stand comes from the deepest part of you, at the very heart of who you are. Now, living your stand gives you clarity and power, as well as the capacity to engage people and institutions to literally move the earth. A stand is something that is uplifting and enhances life. Those are key elements. It is usually for something rather than against something. For example, you could be against um, police brutality, but what you stand for is justice for all. How does that ring true
Yeah.
to you, Leah?
Yeah, I love that the positive lens that goes into taking a stance and that it is for something, not necessarily against. It's important to have things that you're against, but it is harder to push against than it is to stand firm. Um, when you mentioned the quote of standing, give me a lever, and it made me think of when I used to practice yoga a lot more frequently, and mountain pose is so boring. It's a boring pose that some people are like, you're just standing there, but it can be very powerful and grounding. And you pay attention to the touch points of your toes and your feet and the balance and your core. And all of a sudden, something that is simply just standing is engaging in all of the parts of your body.
I love that. And I've done mountain pose before, and that is a beautiful explanation of all of that. Yeah. I love what else Lynn wrote. She said that taking a stand comes, as we said, from a deep part, but she says a stand is visionary, one of my favorite things,
Mm,
and focuses on the big picture. It's like a direction for the human journey. Usually, a stand is something larger than you could possibly accomplish by yourself. thus a beloved community.
Yes.
And you don't end up getting credit, however, you may not, when you take a stand. You have access to vision. You're in the flow of what you want to have happen, and you use it in your life. And your life is lit up with meaning and purpose and usefulness. It is not only what will make your life joyous and fulfilling, it is what is called for on the planet, for our
Yeah.
beautiful Gaia Earth. And we're all needed, every single one of us. I feel like, every fingerprint is unique, and we are all very special and precious. So every
Hmm.
single one of us is an important player in stepping up to the challenge of this
Absolutely.
century. Uh,
Absolutely. Well, I love that your tie into it's very altruistic. Am I saying that right?
yeah, perfect. Yep.
um, in the sense of you are a small but significant piece to the entire puzzle, and
Mhm.
to the entire operation of everything. I know that the whole cog in a machine can sound very negative in the sense of you're just one of the big, but instead of that, it is you are a light, like, and without it, it's a little bit dimmer, right? But you're all together, you can light a room up. And so thinking of it outside of yourself and thinking of the great vision and envisioning the end
Mhm.
result, which is a beloved community, and how your part can have that ripple effect that Mr. Rogers in the quote earlier said. It is not insignificant.
It isn't. Not at all. Not at all. And sometimes, again, younger people, they can feel really insignificant. And I'm like, you're not.
It's easy to get pulled down into
Yeah,
this. Well, what is it? Why does it all matter? What does it matter?
right.
What kind of change can I make?
Yeah.
And sometimes, some days, it might feel like you're not moving the boulder at all, or you're not moving the needle, but little by little, those results will
Mm-hmm.
show.
Finding Nemo movie, one of my favorites, comes into mind, of where the turtles are in the Australian, current, and
Yeah.
being in the flow, and how much fun it is once Nemo and his dad get in the flow of that, and they're all riding in, and it's like, yo, dude, and everybody
Hmm.
matters. Even if somebody gets out of the flow, they'll go out and get them and bring them back in,
Hmm.
and being in the ease and flow of that, even with our own earth, is pretty cool. That just downloaded
Yeah.
in. And so all of this comes to, of as I've read this book by Lynn Twist about taking a stand is what gives us rise to making a commitment. I was like, oh my gosh, she is
Hmm.
amazing how she puts things. And I know that the reason why she has such amazement in putting words in this is she's been a global traveler. She's
Hmm.
seen things from all different perspectives. So, something that you can and aim to accomplish, you could think of the words purpose, stand, and commitment as meaning the same thing. But she actually makes a distinction, and Lynn says that she has in mind a sort of flow. Taking a stand leads to a commitment or commitments, which gives your life purpose. Now, I mean, so just
Yeah.
knowing that we want to give rise to a beloved community and then making a commitment to that alone gives a person purpose and fulfillment.
Absolutely. Keeps you going. I love that they're one after another. You cannot have one without the other. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so then, even in your own individual days, you and I don't always have great days.
No.
And when we have that commitment to our beloved community, that, to me, it's like that's what pulls me toward even more of my own greatness is,
Yeah.
well, I don't want to just step out of being part of a community, because I'm in this flow of commitment. I've
Yeah.
made a commitment to be part of my community. I
Hmm.
love that.
And if
She
you
says,
if you can, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
If you could recognize the positive effect of you being engaged, even when you have rough days or bad days, understanding that by disengaging, there's
Mhm.
a alternate negative effect. And to prevent that, you want to keep going, keep
I love
engaging.
that. I love that. Great distinction of being engaged versus disengaged. And she says that, in other words, finding your purpose begins with a stand, and our stand is our vision and our lever is our commitment. So super cool. The vision is the stand, the lever is the commitment. So
Love that.
I want to bring up an amazing distinction that Lynn makes in her book about living a committed life, about taking a stand versus a position. And Leah and I were going over this before we came on live, and I believe that a lot of times this is where all the dissension begins.
Mhm.
Is as we're going to explain the difference between a stand and a position. So Lynn says that they are not the same, that they are entirely different domains. She mentioned a stand is visionary, looking at the big picture. The positions we take have a smaller scope, kind of like what Leo was talking, you were talking about earlier about we're under an umbrella and there's like little sub, almost environments underneath that overarching umbrella.
Mhm.
Well, Lynn talks about that usually the smaller scopes are going to reflect our beliefs and opinions, of how we've been raised and what we've been around. And taking a position, however, we may consider it to be, right, but taking a position sometimes can actually create an opposition. For example, here's real simple. If there's an up, there's a down. If
Mhm.
there's a left, there's a right. And if there's an us, then that brings forth a
And
them.
them.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Well, and you in our discussion, I'm a very analogy driven kind of person. The analogy that you said she mentions is something like an auditorium.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and go into that, and
I
we'll
mean,
talk
I
about that
hope
right
I
now.
do it justice. So the auditorium perspective is that your position is like a seat in an auditorium. Now,
Mhm.
I remember the first time I ever saw an IMAX movie, and the whole IMAX experience is that, no matter what seat you are in the house, it should be about the same, right? But in a theater, it's not, right? And so we're all in these different seats and we're seeing the same show in the center, but it might look a little different depending on where you're seated. And
Yeah.
so understanding that what you're seeing is true to you, but what someone else is seeing that's a little different is true to them as well.
Hmm.
It's all truth there.
I love that. You know, I feel like that was one of my most evolutionary growths as a human, was to have an awakeness to the very thing that you just said.
Mhm.
Um, I grew up with parents that I was taught, it's this way or no way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what if it isn't?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that wasn't that they didn't really care for that. So,
Yeah, it was I same thing for me when I was raised. It was very much despite knowing that it's not good to say us versus them, it was a very us versus them dialogue, and that grew sort of a resentment towards others. It made it so that I was unquestionably right because it's my truth. It's my truth is the right truth always. But taking the humble stance and maybe taking a step outside of yourself and recognizing that your truth is truth to you and their truth is also truth to them. And
mhm.
it's not an us versus them or who's right and who's wrong, removing sort of the morality around these positions. It's just saying these are different. It's curious. It's curious. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. Curiosity is a gorgeous thing, and this is a great time for us to take a short break. We've introduced to you a little bit about this lever of commitment. So as we go into break, um, have you experienced things in your life where it's an up or a down, a left or a right, it's this way or no way, and you can see that it causes quite dissension and separation rather than embracing the diversity and the strength of it. So with that, let's go to a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about commitment and really bring in the illustration I love to use, the earth as its amazing diversity in and of itself. And so we'll be right back after this short break. Come back and join us. We're going to come in with a great landing on commitment. Welcome back to this final segment of Life in Full Expression. I'm your host, Beth Wolfe, and with my guest, Leah Thompson.
Hi there.
And yeah, we are talking about how to create a beloved community and commitment. And so, with this last segment, I want to go back into a little bit more about taking a stand versus just a position. From and just reading some great information, highly recommend a book by Lynn Twist called Living a Committed Life. And she says that when we take a nature of positionality, so while positions are important, if we were to look from, imagine looking at a beach ball. Leah's looking at one side, I'm looking at the other. She's looking at blue, I'm looking at green. Those are the sides of the beach ball that we look at, and that could be another illustration of positionality. It doesn't mean that the red and the the yellow side of the beach ball doesn't still exist. We're just not seeing it. So while positions are important and useful, they can also get us into a bit of trouble and trapping us in ideology and conflict. And I think you had a quote by John Lewis about that, Leah, didn't
Yeah,
you?
let me see here. We talked about the John Lewis quote with Walking with the Wind there.
Yeah.
I feel like that one, if you want, I could say that one again, because that one really does bring in the whole idea of stepping outside of
Hmm.
yourself. So not getting trapped into your position, and the idea that um, it it's this endless struggle to respond. This is the quote from John Lewis: the endless struggle to respond with decency, dignity, and a sense of brotherhood to all the challenges that face us as a nation as a whole. So it's not no longer, pigeonholing ourselves into this is my problem, and um, my problem is the most important, or this is my position and nobody else's position matters. It's being able to look outside and saying, man, there's this endless struggle and we're all struggling. So instead of meeting that with me, it's holding hands and reading it with decency and dignity, and
Yeah.
remembering that we're all brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. It does download an experience I had in my freshman year of college. We were invited to go on this hike before, it was called freshman orientation, and we're up in the Olympic Mountains, and we're going along the crest, and all of a sudden we see this huge storm coming in, and our leader of the expedition, he's like, okay, we're gonna have to rope up. I'm like, rope up? What do you mean we gotta rope up? What's going on? What do you expect to happen? Well, within moments we were covered in incredible hard rain and weather and fog, and even though we were roped up and people were just 10 feet in front of me and behind me, we couldn't even see each other, and let alone see the trail. And
Mhm.
so we had a very, just kind of narrow view of where we were stepping. And so holding hands, being roped together to make it to a safe place was
Mhm.
imperative that we do that. And so, we
Absolutely.
don't want to get trapped in our ideology until, if I would have said to people, I go, oh, I don't need to be roped up. I got it. I'm on my own.
Yeah.
That didn't really serve the overall community. So,
Yeah, and it deprives you of an opportunity to be able to connect with another human if you're stuck in your own ideals and ideologies, and your position is so strong that you're not willing to see the vision. You're not willing to step outside and um, observe or sit with another perspective. You're really depriving yourself of a connection.
oh, I love that. I love connection. It's one of my
Hmm.
favorite things in the whole world
We all
is to
need it.
connect with people. Yeah. We already experienced
Necessary.
that in the pandemic of not being connected, and
Yeah,
uh,
it is
it
a
was
human need.
it is a human need. And so I want to give a little bit more from Lynn's perspective on the auditorium illustration that you brought up. She says that um, when we're sitting in an auditorium, we are all seated in different positions and seats within the auditorium. So we all have different points of view of the speaker. So, for example, if a person is sitting on the side of an auditorium, maybe halfway up, they have a different point of view than the speaker. And if you're standing backstage and you're looking from there, you see the back of the speaker. And I love that she points out that all 3 points of view are 100% accurate for the person who has them. But if you and I start and here's the key element that Lynn brings up. If you and I are starting to identify with just our point of view and believing that it's right and any other point of view is wrong, well, you and I will try to get people to agree with our point of view. And it's an exercise in futility because every point of view has its own validity. So
Yes.
this is where I really think commitment comes into play here, that we could all commit to authentic stand, as Lynn Twist describes, that we can take into account all positions so that you and I, and this is the game changer right here, is that all you and I have the capacity, we're building this capacity to see and even incorporate all points of view.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it does take exercise and intentionality to be able to step outside and commit to taking on other perspectives. I mean, and it comes with a natural force. You and I were talking about how, trees don't look at one another and compare, oh, well, the fir tree looking at the maple tree, right?
Yeah.
That was your analogy
Right,
there,
right,
saying
right.
your leaves are falling. It's
Yeah.
not a bad thing, right? It's just different.
Right. The fir tree's like, dude, you're losing your leaves. That's not a good thing. And
Yeah.
the maple tree's like, well, really, it it could be a good thing because
I'm
actually,
nurturing the ground with my
yeah, they're
leaves
gonna
and
decompose and they're gonna feed all kinds of things into your roots and system and my root system. And um, uh,
absolutely.
Gaia Earth is such a beautiful illustration of diversity, and that's why it's so important that we take care of it and really mimic it. They're like a biomimicry, that we are looking at how well the Earth is diversified. There was another thing that we were talking about, is the skill set of curiosity that you brought
Yes.
up.
Yeah. So being curious instead of judgmental. So in moments, this is a practice that I'm currently really trying to engage with. And it came from raising kids, to be honest. That was something that was very challenging was, rather than trying to assign morality or judgment to what they're doing or their behaviors, we can just be curious about why are you doing that? What's that providing for you? Is that helping? And we can kind of talk about it and be thoughtful about behaviors or ideas and in practice in humanity, like when you're interacting with people, if someone is being outrageous or rude or um, disturbing in some sense to yourself, you could be like, instead of judging them
Hmm.
as, obviously be safe, and again,
Right,
don't accept abuse. It's more just of a curiosity of, I wonder what they are struggling with. They
right.
clearly are having a hard time with this, and by me meeting them where they're at with their
Hmm.
energy isn't always helpful. Sometimes you have to kind of be like, I'm not gonna match energy here. We're gonna we're gonna try and de-escalate a bit or remove from the situation. But you don't want to be like, I don't that person's a bad person. That's a terrible person. Or this community is terrible. When we moved to Kitsap County, a lot of people I've heard who are not in the Navy feel like if you're not in the Navy, it's really hard to get in because it's a big naval community in Kitsap County. And I was like, it is what you make it. So are you going to go
Right.
out there and say, hey, well, I'm curious, what other people are not naval families or people who might like to connect who aren't religious or something, or who are religious, or you go seeking it out, but you want to connect some way, and a lot of that is based in curiosity. And so rather than attaching a judgment,
Yeah.
go with it with curiosity.
It's very powerful. It's super cool. It'd be great for all of us to practice that skill set of curiosity. I know that there's some times when, I'm maybe not understanding someone, or I just don't get their perspective, or, I might be scared or stuck in my own point of view. Like I super glued myself to the seat.
Hmm.
It's like, you really could go somewhere else in the auditorium, Beth. And I'm like,
You're like,
yeah, I
yeah,
think I put super glue on my bottom and I'm not moving. So
yeah,
that skill set of curiosity is almost like a solvent
it
that is
is.
going to release you from that position and come from um, One of my mentors talks about that you can move from a bug eye view to a bird's eye view. And a bug eye view, it's almost like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and you're looking at this blade of grass, and the backyard looks enormous. But
Yeah.
if you had a bird's eye view, it's really not that big, and you can see how to navigate. And I truly believe that being committed to a beloved community really is going to give us that bird's eye view
Hmm.
and more of that IMAX experience where we're going to be able to see things from all perspectives. And honestly, I'm going to say this word. I think that that's fun. I
Yeah.
really do. I've traveled the world, I've been in all kinds of cultures, and it is really fun to see other people's viewpoints and hear their experiences. It's
Yeah.
really
I agree
extraordinary.
with the term fun. I notice in people who are stuck in their position, uh, and they struggle, and you almost want to tell them, "Hey, like let go of that." And maybe you won't have, but sometimes they don't realize that they're actually having a harder time being stuck in their position. You've mentioned traveling the world multiple times and how experiencing other cultures. I'll never forget going to Italy as a high schooler, and a girl packed a giant tub of Skippy peanut butter
Oh,
because she was like, it's disgusting. The food, I won't eat any of it. Like she was not open to experiencing.
oh,
And she
wow.
had a, she had, I was like, you had a different experience of that trip than anyone else because it was set on, I'm a picky eater. I'm not willing to try things. I've got my peanut butter and crackers, and that's all I need. And I was like, you missed out.
Wow. Wow.
It's
Yeah, I think she missed out on some culinary delight for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
it's like, you make it though. Like you might be comfortable doing what's comfortable for you, but you're missing
mhm.
out, and you're missing out on connection, and you're missing out on experiences that life provides when
Yeah.
you're stuck in your position.
Well, it's so super cool that you're bringing that up because really, I mean, if we were to ask not only you and I and our audience here of what do you think or believe that this kind of commitment to a visionary stand could really benefit our communities? Like we're presenting a call to action to
Mhm.
ourselves as well as our listeners. So, well, maybe some how would that benefit our community to have this
Absolutely.
kind of
Well,
commitment?
it's that ripple effect of when you've made a commitment to yourself as an individual and you start interacting with
Mhm.
those in your community and you start inviting people to meet you where you're at and you're meeting them, it has that ripple effect. You're going to see others maybe feel more comfortable to step out of their position, and to feel like, oh, okay, I could get out of my seat. All right, I'll give that a shot. And then that has a ripple effect. And so getting involved in your community removes the individual, and it makes it so that you're now connecting to those around you. It makes your community richer, a better place to live, a better place to raise your children in, um, and just all around a more quality human experience for all involved.
Absolutely, the quality of the experience. And I go back to the forest illustration that, amongst the forest, the roots are always spreading out into unfamiliar territory under the ground,
Mhm.
seeking out, different kinds of nutrients that they can draw up into themselves. And then the trees add the oxygen to the air. And so, as us as human beings, I mean, setting the intention of what would it look like and feel like for us to be committed to our beloved communities and drawing up the nutrients so then we can actually be part of really what we're explaining is the law of circulation.
Mhm.
A very healthy mountain lake has got water coming in and water going out. And
Exactly.
that as a human vessel, we are a conduit of energy and we can choose the kind of energy that we're going to bring in and that we're going to share. And so
Absolutely.
I'm so excited that you got to join me today talking
Thank you,
about how to
Beth.
create a beloved community. And what would be one call
Thank
to
you.
action that you might give our audience today?
I would challenge you this week, next week, in the future, this summer, find events that get you out of your comfort zone. Surround yourself with someone. or people who maybe you haven't sat down and had a conversation with, or become an observer. If you're not an extrovert and you just kind of are like, I just want to sit and watch, that's fine. Go to your local communities, observe, take note, see other people's perspective, and approach it with curiosity instead of judgment.
Beautiful, beautiful. Approach it with curiosity rather than judgment. Be observers. All right, you guys, you amazing souls that bring amazing butterfly effects and ripples to the world. We're so excited that you joined us today. And stay tuned for next week. Leah's going to join me next week too.
Yay.
And the topic will be amazing. I know it will. And I so appreciate Sierra, my producer, doing the show today. Thank you so much, Sierra. And we'll see you next week on Transformation Talk Radio, 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And again, have a great week and set that intention to make a commitment to a beloved community. See you next week, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Life in Full Expression with me, Beth Wolfe. Tune in each Monday at noon Pacific Time, 3 p.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Be your most elevated self and pursue a path of fulfillment, clarity, expansion, fun, and living your best life. If you would like to discover the 7 dimensions of your life blueprint of expression, to fully express yourself, reveal your heart's clarity for dynamic direction, and activate your unique capability, visit BethWolfe.com. That's Beth, WOLFE.com.